Hey y'all, I'm Attica Scott, former Kentucky State Representative.
They're asking me about everything, local, state, federal, all the time. How do I do this? How do I do that? What's going on with the consent decree? Hey y'all, welcome to Ask Attica. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning. Hey y'all, welcome to, Hey y'all, welcome back to this episode of Ask Attica. This is the second half of this week's show, and we have two special guests with us that are going to be discussing Amnesty Court. And for full transparency, we're the community coalition that is helping to bring Amnesty Court to folks. So we are on Zoom, we're virtual this week, and we're usually in person. So my internet art of technology. So I want to introduce my two guests today who are going to be answering some questions about Amnesty Court to help educate folks. So first off, we have Kungu Njuguna of the ACLU of Kentucky, who is one of our Amnesty experts. We have Mark Pence, the founder of Gloves, Not Guns, who is an amazing community leader who always shows up and speaks out when we ask him to. So I'm going to go ahead and get started so I can respect and value y'all's time. So the first question, just to help folks who are tuning in know a little bit more about Amnesty Court, and maybe I'll start with you, Kungu, with this question is, can you explain what Amnesty Court is, or the Amnesty docket? Some people may hear that term. Explain what it is and who qualifies for it.
Yeah, the Amnesty Docket is a special court program that allows individuals with low-level offenses who have active bench warrants to get those bench warrants set aside. So anyone who has a court case in Jefferson District Court with an active bench warrant for a low-level, nonviolent, non-sexual misdemeanor or Class D felony can go to louisvilleprosecutors.org/redocket to register to see if they qualify.
Thank you for that. And you may not have much more to add to this question, but I just want to make sure I'm getting as clear information out to people as possible. Are there particular legal mechanisms that allow for a bench warrant to be set aside or redocketed?
Yes, well, a bench warrant is, I think as most people know, if you miss a court date, you are what is known as failure to appear. And a court can issue a summons, which is just a letter telling you you've missed your court date and come to a new date, or they can issue a bench warrant, which is essentially an arrest warrant, which means if a police officer interacts with you, looks you up, you would be arrested. The only way to get that aside is usually showing up in court and having the judge set it aside. There are other mechanisms. If you go to jeffersondistrictcourt.com, you can try to redocket your case via that system, but you do so without a lawyer. And quite frankly, I just don't advise people doing that without legal assistance. If they're going to do that, they should contact a lawyer.
Thank you so much for that explanation. And I think this is a question Mark and Kungu, you both can respond to. And because Mark, I know you've been involved for quite a while as well. So how often do the courts offer this kind of amnesty? And how long have y'all been involved?
I'll just quickly jump in. I think we've done this now. This will be the fourth amnesty docket over a 2 or 3 year period. Before we had just offered it, the courts had offered it only once a year. And this year they agreed to do it 2 times in this calendar year.
And Mark, how long have you been involved?
So I'm sorry about that. I've been involved. I think y'all would have to kind of like educate me to know the exact amount of time. But I want to say since the first Amnesty Court docket, I actually was a participant. And so I signed up. I heard about it through some other community organizations. And I had some things going on that I wanted to set aside so I could be able to focus on my organization, Gloves Not Guns, Inc., because I actually work with youth who have similar issues to court and get things set aside so they can focus on things. And so I just felt like as a leader of such an organization, I needed to step forward first and practice what I preach and do that. And so I've been involved for a long time because I believe in Amnesty Court. I've built relationships with the people who organize it and do it. And now this year at our World's Fest 2025, I was able to actually give people information about Amnesty Court. And I don't know exactly how many people from the World's Fest might have signed up or anything like that, but I know we talked to a lot of people and gave out a lot of information. So it was really wonderful just being on the other side of things, from going from being a participant to actually helping recruit participants and being a voice to the movement, so that people see that a real person from the community that they love, that they trust, that they respect, participates in Amnesty Court, so that they can know that it's not what it sounds like. For a lot of people that come from our community, when you hear something like Amnesty Court, you hear the word court first. And so that kind of makes you feel a little reserved. You kind of wonder, is this a setup? Or, just from the lack of trust we already have, right? And so it was something that I know I needed to participate in, because one, I had a lack of trust. And so having the ACLU and Kungu and Angela and you and everybody who's been a part of this, it gave me a little bit more faith in it, because I believe in y'all as leaders and the things and the work you do in the community. So I've been rocking with Amnesty Court for a while, and I'm glad.
Thank you so much, Mark, for being willing to share your personal story about your connection, your Amnesty Court. So I'm curious to know how or what the real life consequences are for people who are living with an active bench warrant, which you talked some about Kungu, but digging a little bit more deeply into it, like especially for low level or nonviolent offenses, what are the real life consequences for people who are living with an active bench warrant?
I think, and Mark can probably chime in later. I think when you've got that active bench warrant, I think there's a lot of fear. That's what we've seen with folks who are always fearful of engaging with the police, because you could be arrested at any moment, and reconnected to the criminal legal system. And so I think there's always this fear, and they don't show up for like what I would, I used to be a prosecutor, and so we see it as something basic. But if you're not in the legal system, people, as Mark said, they don't trust it. I know people who were like, "Oh, if I walk into the courtroom, they're going to arrest me." But the reality is they don't know that you have that bench warrant. It's only really when an officer stops you and then looks into the system. But I think it's really important, though, for people to reach out. If you're eligible, speak to your family and your friends. We have a lot of space on the docket. As Mark can talk to, and I saw people, like there was a young individual who got a low level. It had to do with like some citation, showed $25, which we paid, and she was able to go get her driver's license. So some people are driving, because what can happen is your driver's license could be suspended and you're driving unlawfully for something so minor. And then you get more charges as a result of that, more fines, more fees. So it can just build on itself and make a small situation into a larger one.
Do you want to add anything to that, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, basically everything that Congo said, and then you have just the day-to-day living of it. You got a lot of fathers who have active bench warrants, and maybe to the mothers and the children, it seems as though that they're not being involved, or that they're not, being a part of events and different things. But some of these fathers, the fear that you have from, just walking in the street, and something could be happening across the street, and the police come in your direction, and now all of a sudden you in the hot spot. It's hard to want to be at a basketball game for your son or daughter. It's hard to be at a graduation ceremony. It's hard to want to take them to school every day, knowing that you have that desire in your heart. Or I got a warrant, but I don't know what's going on. I know I got other things going on. And so it is a day-to-day fear to get a job. Now, some of these things they are in from time to time, person to person, case by case. But for a lot of people who are dealing with the legal system, it keeps them from being able to go sign up for college, or go get a job, or go be a part of family events, or go to a doctor's appointment, go to the dentist, go to, wherever a therapist, wherever you need to go to even heal yourself. And so Amnesty Court does make a big difference, because just not worrying about having that warrant takes so much weight off your shoulders, where you can do simple things like going to the doctor. So now you know what that lump in your stomach is has been hurting you. Or you can go sign up for college, because you're a great engineer, but now you can give it a chance when you can leave your house and go to JCTC to sign up for school. So, like I said, I mean, it's a day-to-day thing, because a lot of the mistrust comes from a historic place. We all know that. And I think, again, when we talk about Amnesty Court and the faces, the diversity you see in Amnesty Court, it shows that, yeah, we still got a lot of work to do, but we're getting a lot of stuff done just now by being able to get our people to show up for court and get these bench warrants removed. But it's our people that's helping doing the work. Beautiful thing.
Thank you so much for that, Mark and Kungu, both for responding to those questions and really helping people understand better Amnesty Court. Because, like to your point, Mark, people hear court. Even though amnesty was the first word, you still hear court. So we got to talk about and be honest about what some of those barriers may be. So we break them down for folks and share with them that, hey, this is something that you could benefit from. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I got a few more questions for Mark and Kungu. Really want to support folks understanding what Amnesty Court is. Actually, I'm going to ask you, Kungu, if you'll be prepared. Hopefully I'll remember. If I don't, please do share it at the end, the dates for Amnesty Court, and there's an upcoming deadline for Amnesty Court. But we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a few seconds.
Healthy Beginnings Connect Us offers resources, classes, and more. Visit us at 1141 South 2nd Street or www.blackbirthjustice.org. Hey y'all, welcome back to this episode of Ask Attica, where we're talking about Amnesty Court and what that means for some folks who may be listening in, or maybe some of your family or friends or folks you know. So please take note and share with folks. Again, we have two amazing guests with us, Kungu Njuguna of the ACLU of Kentucky and Mark Pence of Gloves, Not Guns. So they've already answered a series of questions for us to help us better understand Amnesty Court. I really want to dig in a little bit more, kind of help dispel some myths that people may have or answer some concerns that folks may have and share information about how you sign up for Amnesty Court. So can y'all talk a little bit more about what barriers may prevent folks from resolving their bench warrants under non-amnesty circumstances? So amnesty, as I think you mentioned before, Kungu, is happening. We have this court twice a year. Okay, the rest of the year, how do people resolve their issues?
Well, there are two ways. One, the first way is I would always, if possible, is a person to hire an attorney to try to get their warrant set aside. If you were appointed a public defender, reach back out to the public defender's office. They might be able to get your case back on the docket and redocket it. Sometimes they are no longer assigned to your case if it's been a long time. The other way to do it is if you go to jeffersondistrictcourt.com. There is on that website, there is a redocket process where you can email the court and ask that your case be given a new court date. You can also go into court, show up, fill out a form with what's known as a case manager, and then that will be reviewed by the prosecutor and a judge who then will decide whether or not to set aside the bench warrant. Again, as I said, in that case, especially if you're without a lawyer, you would go before a judge potentially, and then that judge would have the option of setting aside your bench warrant or taking you into custody. So that one does come with risk.
Thanks, Kungu. And I'm going to ask our producer to be sure, and I think I have to actually send him the flyer about Amnesty Court, but also to share the links to the website that you mentioned so that folks throughout the rest of the year can get the information that they need about their bench warrant. All right, Mark, did you want to add anything to that question before I move on?
The email process is actually pretty quick. I at one point had to do that through email. It was pretty quick. And like, Kungu said, you can come to the courthouse, but I would advise, like he said, you want to hire an attorney, but you also want to just bring a loved one or a relative with you, simply because sometimes there's, a lot of stuff in the system that might not always show up, or it just happens to show up that day when you go, and it may be a little bit more serious than you thought. And so you always want to have someone with you to leave your keys, your cell phone, your wallet, that, your personal things. Or if you drove, then someone to take your car and move it so it doesn't get towed, something like that. And that's not to say that when you show up to the courthouse, you will be taken into custody. It's a pretty fast process. It's just that, you want to be prepared. If you always stay ready, you don't got to get ready. And so, I always take that in the mind. But yeah, these ways of being able to redocket it are definitely good methods, modern and pretty much accessible for just about anybody.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you reminding folks to show up with someone because, like you said, it's not necessarily that something will happen. Sometimes you need someone there who can maybe ask some questions you might not know to ask, you might not think about to ask. Someone who's there as your support system. And, they're like maybe right now some questions for you to ask on your own behalf, but I think it's great to have an advocate with you. So Mark, you shared a little bit about this already. If you want to share more, please do. Kungu, you may have some stories to share, but just to help people just understand a little bit more about the importance and value of Amnesty Court, do either of you have additional stories about people who have been helped by previous Amnesty Court efforts here in Jefferson County?
I do not.
I
Oh,
personally
good.
just want to share my own experience. Like, I didn't have a lot of trust for the courts for many reasons over a lifetime of just having experience with the courts and just not really having the best experiences. Amnesty Court took place during the pandemic for the most part, of the after effects of the pandemic and the recent uprisings we had in town, which also added to a lot of the mistrust I had. And so to be able to be a part of it with the people who are organizing and putting it together and already seeing the work and seeing what you all do just made it easier for me, because sometimes you really just have to see people that look like you, but you also have to see people that you've already seen doing the work, that have already pretty much shown you that they're trustworthy. That's hard for a lot of folks, but then being able to just really walk out of the courthouse feeling like I had a weight off my shoulders and I could focus, because that's what I did. When I participated in Amnesty Court, I really wasn't thinking about going to college, but after I was able to get that bench warrant set aside, I participated in a program in Salvation Army called Chefs for Success. I did that, and then I ended up signing up for Sullivan University at the culinary school. I'll be graduating this December. And again, I just say it's because I was able to have the courage to get up, to go with people I trust, that I know that had, my best interest, for me to go do this process and then move on with my life. Like, a lot of people are literally sitting in kind of a frozen place because they have a bench warrant. It could be from a month ago, it could be from a year ago, it could be from 20 years ago, but people are sitting and life is going and time is passing and they missing out on being able to follow their dreams because of something so simple that could be a traffic warrant or a failure to appear or whatever it is. And so I'm thankful for Amnesty Court, because I was able to move on with my life, and I've moved on so far that I've been able to participate in the Taste of South Louisville this year at Churchill Downs, and I'm catering. I'm doing a lot of cool stuff. I'm still doing the work that I do with Gloves Not Guns, and I'm able to just better myself, and I'm grateful for that. So I'm thankful.
Yes, on all of that. Love to hear it. And it's not like I'm calling you out in front of everybody who's going to be watching, but I feel like a few months ago you said you were going to make me something that you learned how to make in culinary school, but I haven't had that yet. But I'm not calling you out or anything. I'm just saying. It was just a FYI.
Where,
Um,
where's my cake?
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Um, so, I think it's important for us to address like systemic issues and what are the changes that we can make. So, the other question that I have, and we'll do one more break, and then I'll come back and ask y'all the last two questions that I have. But with this particular question, I want to know beyond Amnesty Court, what are some of the systemic changes that are needed to reduce the number of bench warrants in the first place?
Yeah, Amnesty program is great to help people like in real time. But our ultimate goal is that people aren't issued bench warrants for low-level offenses. But that takes changes at the state level. A lot of times we see people, one of the worst examples was someone who had a bench warrant for failure to pay a fine of $12.99. And here's the thing, that person who gets arrested on that bench warrant and you go to our local jail, it's $161 a day to house someone in our jail, over $12.99, which doesn't include the officer's time, the judge's time, and the prosecutor's time. So we're looking at state legislation that may say, you know what, we're only going to issue summons for people who just owe some monetary obligations. So there have been some legislations around that. We're also looking at legislation that just would, quite frankly, eliminate fines and fees for a lot of our folks who can't afford it. So there is right now a bill that was filed last year to be filed again that just would collect data on that, so we can help educate legislators that show, hey, we assess all these fines and fees, but guess what? We have a huge segment of our society that can't afford them, and we're arresting people for 12 bucks, and it's costing us more money. So I think it's a lot of changing state law and also, quite frankly, educating judges. Judges have discretion. Judges don't have to issue the bench warrants. They could say, you know what, in this instance, it's for $2. I'm just going to send them a letter. If they come, they come. If they don't, they don't.
Thank you, Kungu. And we'll make sure along the way during the legislative session next year that as that bill is moving, we share that information with folks because they may be able to reach out to their elected officials and make a difference in getting that bill passed. Mark, did you want to add anything to that question?
I think, just because I have an organization that kind of focuses on bettering community too, is that creating more jobs, whether it's volunteer work within the courts that, okay, you owe a fine, well, you can come and do something to help to whatever the operations are at the courts to take that fine down. I mean, they do it with children who may get in trouble for like stealing something. They can do some kind of, so it's looking at how can we create initiatives to also help with the people who can't afford it. Because sometimes, it seems as though money is the thing that kind of makes things go. And so if it's just a monetary value, can you work that debt off? Can you do payments? Is there something we can do around it? And I always think that just, again, educating the judges and the prosecutors, but having more people, that can be the face of these movements to show people that, yeah, I'm real. This is real stuff I'm going through. And sometimes people really don't have it. I mean, you look around in Kentucky, we're one of the poorest states. So I think it's crazy just for people to be charged fines anyway in a place where we barely have jobs, people barely have housing, people barely have food. You got to have some kind of understanding. And I know it's a two-way street because we have to understand where they coming from. And so I think it's just us meeting in rooms more and really discussing the realities of what's happening when these people have fines, when they have bench warrants, and how it affects the city overall, because these people are just going to keep overcramming the jails, or they'll be outside on the streets, or they'll be struggling. And we have so much struggle and so much crowding anyway. It's easier just to meet these people halfway so we can kind of level down on some of that.
Yeah, thank you both so much for reminding us of the impact of these bench warrants and that there are alternatives.
Through every note, every performance, the arts connect us. The arts connect us through joy and through awe, bridging cultures and generations. From intimate theaters to the grandest stages, the arts bring us together, reminding us that we're never truly alone. When we experience the arts, we experience each other. Kentucky Performing Arts. The arts connect us.
All right, y'all, welcome back to this episode of Ask Attica. We've got about a minute. So, I love civics in 60, news in 60, so that's perfect. I'm going to ask my guests to wrap us up in this last minute with any closing comments. And we're also going to be sure to share the flyer about Amnesty Court with you. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kungu, and then you, Mark, for a quick, maybe actually 30 seconds to each wrap up.
Yes, sign up. The Amnesty dockets are Friday, October 10th, Saturday, October 11th, and Monday, October 13th. You can sign up again at louisvilleprosecutors.org. The deadline is September 19th. Please sign up, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell everybody. This program works, as you've heard from Mark, and it can really help people. So please sign up and spread the word. And also, just real quick, if you have, we help pay fines, fees, we help with childcare, and we help with transportation. So if you think, oh, I get on the court docket, but I don't know how to get there, we can help get a TARC pass or pay for an Uber. Please, please sign up and share and spread the word.
Hey y'all, I'm Attica Scott, former Kentucky State Representative, and you're joining me today on State Watch Night.
We will continue to provide updates as we have more information.
Kentucky State Representative, and you're joining me today on State Watch Night.